gratefully we've had a lot of guys come back from that season and guys that knew how to win from that game, and now we're trying to make sure we teach the young guys the same thing.
October 10th, 2015 in Lincoln is where players say that's when this team learned how to win. Rafael Gaglianone, of course, kicking a 46-yard field goal with time running out to give Wisconsin a 23-21 win. Hi, everyone, with Matt LePay and Mike Lucas. I'm Chris Hall. It's Badger Breakdown. Teams got to learn a lot of things. You got to learn how to win, guys. That's where Rob Wheelwright and both Dario Gumawale said that's kind of how it started with this group. We'll get to the matchup on Saturday coming up in a minute. But every week it seems like we got to talk about injuries, guys. This week we all learned on Monday, not only will Jack Cichy be out for the rest of the year, he did everything he could to prevent that, playing a good chunk of that game with one arm, and kind of embodying what this program's all about. But again, this defense, talked about the best level of this defense, facing yet another test that in the past already so far this year it's passed.
Yeah, we talked a lot about this linebacking core and how deep it is. Well, it's not so deep now when you're missing Cichy and obviously missing Chris Orr since the first defensive play from scrimmage in the opener against LSU. They're good enough as a team, I think, to overcome this. You need Ryan Conley, Leon Jacobs, that combination to be able to step in. They have very good linebackers still, but Jack Cichy was really establishing himself as one of the better linebackers, not just on this team, but in this conference and beyond. And you're right, against a Nebraska team that, on the one hand, people probably are still wondering, okay, how good are they really? Well, they haven't lost, so they're pretty good, explosive on offense, a dual threat type of quarterback who's getting some healthy bodies back around him. So another big test for this Badger team, and specifically the Wisconsin defense.
When next man up is replacing a guy like Vince Beagle for 2 weeks, or your leading tackler for the rest of the season, these players, though, Mike, they're prepared for something like this. They've been coached the right way, and you will not hear a single person all the way up to Paul Chryst make any sort of excuse for how this may impact the rest of the year. You just won't.
This was an attitude that was in place during training camp when TJ Edwards was injured before the start of fall drills. And then with each passing week, they've been tested a little bit more. When Chris Orr went down on the first defensive snap. So now they really don't flinch at all. They prepare, each player on the depth chart prepares as if he is the starter. And I think that's a really important mentality to have. We can throw out the cliches about the next man in or you're one play away from being that starter. But the preparation is so vital. We've talked about it in the past. And each of these players, whether they're the number 2 or number 3, go into a game prepared as if they will play as a starter.
Well, it's happened enough where they're living it,
yeah.
Because they know it's not just coach speak anymore, right? The one play away, which sometimes you can let that go in one ear and come out the other, but there have been enough injuries where the guys who are 2 and 3 on the depth chart, they have lived that. They have been that guy who all of a sudden has moved up a notch and has played and has been counted on to play. So you hope that with this latest injury to Jack Cichy, that trend can continue. This is a very good defense. It's an elite defense, especially given the schedule that this team has played. I think you can call it elite and not be stretching it. They're missing a big cog in that defense, but I think they're good enough where they have every chance to overcome it.
I agree with what Matt said too. You can't replace Jack Cichy because he's that good. And we could say that about some of the other players. But they're in a position where the next man up is more than capable. And I think of the silver lining, Garrett Dooley, Ryan Conley already. Those 2 players we knew nothing about as far as what they could deliver on the field. And we found a lot of answers, haven't we?
Found out they're really good.
Yeah, we
They're
have.
going to be around a little bit too, which is pretty good to know.
Yeah, and you're trying to characterize this defense, just asking whether or not if it's elite. They're 4th in the country in scoring defense, so I think that puts you up there. You're top 5, yeah, you can go ahead and say it's elite.
Yeah, especially given the schedule they played and the explosive offenses they played. It's one thing to do it against middle-of-the-road kind of teams. They're not playing too many middle-of-the-road kind of teams.
How do you like the way Justin Wilcox and everyone on that side of the ball responded at Kinnick?
Well, we talk about this also. The coaching staff has done such a great job of putting these players in positions where they can have success. They've mixed up the types of things they've done schematically. Every time, I know Matt would agree with this, you talk to these players, the individuals, and they have such great confidence in the game plan from week to week.
Yeah, it's kind of cool sometimes when a projected storyline becomes a non-story or something that's different from what you think, because what was the off-season talk? Dave Aranda's gone. He's gone to LSU, and Dave Aranda's a terrific coach. I mean, and he's doing great work again at LSU. But how's Justin Wilcox? How is he going to handle this? Well, pretty good. It looks like, given a schedule that is daunting, is well documented, and Jim Leonhard, but that whole group works well together. And the players, we've talked about it before here on this platform, they play fast. And that tells you that they're well schooled, they're very prepared, and then on Saturday they just go let it rip. And they've been doing that throughout the course of this season, at least so far.
Should we shift to two quarterbacks getting snaps there at Kinnick? That was fun to see. I think it was 16 snaps, I think, for Bart Houston. Change of pace. I'm guessing you knew it was coming. You guys talked to Coach Chryst. You guys were prepared to call it that way. I think the way Paul explained why it's good for this group at this point of the year after the game, you could tell both quarterbacks on board.
Which is critical, because it's probably not a perfect world for either quarterback, right? If each was being honest, and I'd really like to go wire to wire here, but the way this team is constructed this year with the type of personnel they have, Paul thinks this is the best way to go, and I give Bart Houston all the credit in the world. I mean, he's finally the starting quarterback right at the beginning of the season, and then that job lasts about 2.5 games, and then he's not seeing the field, but he stays ready. We talked about it, but sometimes it's injury, sometimes it's other factors where you are the second guy or the third guy on the depth chart. Well, Bart was the second guy, but he kept preparing as a one, and he gets out there, he leads the team on a touchdown drive in the first half, and gives you one of those Bart Houston running back runs that we saw against LSU and saw it again in the fourth quarter against Iowa.
It's very true. And Paul gave us the heads up prior to the start of the season, said, I'm probably going to find a way to use both quarterbacks. He just didn't say when or how. And if you really want to view it in a different sense, with Bart Houston, they had a design package for Bart. It's a little bit unlike the Wildcat, but it's not as well. These are things that he does that can help the team a little bit different from what Alex can do.
Yeah, the difference with this is a Wildcat QB who can, if you want to call it that, who can throw.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, that's the cool part.
It's just the individualized package that they put in for him.
I want to go a little further into X's and O's on that in a minute, but first, you remember last year, Dario Gumbawale went for $117 against Nebraska, and then last week, 4 catches for 50 or so odd yards. It's element of surprise. Maybe it's taking advantage of matchups. I asked both Dare and Alex Hornibrook about kind of the change of pace we saw in this Iowa game. They both said to me, whatever gets the ball down the field.
I think, we can be a very scary offense when we can do things that other teams aren't ready for, whether that's Bart coming in or whether that's different types of wrinkles in the formations or personnels and that thing. But we always trust Coach Chryst and Coach Rudolph. Those guys know what they're doing when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. So, anything that they do, we're ready to go out there and do. But, I think we saw on Saturday that when we throw different things at defenses, we can be successful.
For the most part, our offense is at its best when everybody's executing and everyone's doing their job and we're moving the ball. The surprise, that helps too, but we want to be a team that can move the ball regardless of the circumstances.
So for a couple of weeks, just being able to finish off drives is something that we've discussed. And yeah, that unfortunate, the ball squirting out right as Corey was going over the goal line last week, yes, that's a factor. But for the most part, we have seen some drives slow down a little bit once they get kind of past the 35. This week, though, against Iowa, you see Bart come in and really use his feet a little bit and then also his arm, finding Fumagalli and get Wisconsin at that point on the board.
Oh, you saw that good fastball that Bart Houston has. Alex Hornibrook throws a great deep ball, which we saw with the throw to Quintez Cephas later in the game, but you see the zip on Bart's intermediate pass to Troy Fumagalli, which led to the touchdown. The other thing, too, to keep in mind, I have to remind myself this, that the red zone numbers, Paul Chryst has openly said, no, it's not where he would want them to be. But again, you go back to the defenses they faced. Right. LSU and Ohio State are the best in the country at red zone defense. Michigan's pretty good, period, on defense. Iowa's pretty good. Nebraska is improved defensively this season. So again, you try to put it in perspective. If you're a coach, you're trying to correct what you can correct. But for the rest of us, we have to look big picture and again, look at who they're playing and how stubborn those teams have been against everybody.
No, again, I agree with you. And the most important thing is come away with some points. You're not going to always score touchdowns. Just get some points and be more consistent with the way you attack in the red zone. I think that'll come in time too. We can't forget about what they've done with the offensive line and the number of different combinations up front. And in each of the series almost, there was a different lineup or group of O-linemen.
Yeah, that's a story that's less sexy, I guess, than the quarterbacks, but in a way it's more fascinating.
It is.
Not as much B-roll to cover us up when
No.
we're talking about that.
Exactly.
Not as much.
You don't see this every day.
But
right.
no, I mean, you've heard it. I mean, you worked in the NFL. I mean, you always hear these coaches at the college level, and they probably say it at high school too. If we could stay the same 5 tackle to tackle, boy, that's a perfect world. Right. But you're seeing this offensive line rotate bodies in some ways like teams rotate defensive linemen. You're trying to keep guys fresh, and again, that's what this staff believes gives them the best chance to win. It's outside the box. It is pretty interesting to watch. Lack of B-roll notwithstanding.
We want to stick to our 10-minute rule. So real quick, bowl eligibility, Freedom Trophy, a shot at the Big Ten title game still on the line. The most important thing you'll be looking for on Saturday night.
Containing Tommy Armstrong, their quarterback. He's very dangerous when he's outside the pocket. Numbers are improved from a year ago. Still not as accurate as he'd like to be, but a very dangerous player. Got to keep him contained.
Well, I'll follow up on the red zone, see how the Badgers do in that area of the field and how much consistency they can get out of their offense regardless of who's playing quarterback.
And then, of course, what you'll dress up as for Halloween.
Right here.
Radio guy?
Yeah, radio guy.
Okay.
Trained professional.
Yeah.
No one will
Radio guy
believe it.
and trained professional.
Mustard stains right here. We're
How
good to go.
creative. Remember, that's right. It is Halloween week. It is Halloween weekend, so I want to make sure we ask all of you, be safe, take care of each other, and dial in. It's going to be fun. Another night game inside Camp Randall. Kickoff on Saturday night at 6 o'clock. That's Badger Breakdown. For Matt and Mike, I'm Chris.